Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
There's a moment. You probably know the one. You're standing in the middle of your kitchen. Or maybe you're lying awake at 2 a.m. with the house finally, blessedly quiet, and something inside you cracks open just a little. Not dramatically, not the way they show it in movies, just a quiet whisper. A soft, aching question that floats up from somewhere deep. When did I stop telling the truth about how I feel? Not to other people. To yourself. Because here's what nobody warns you about when you spend decades being the strong one. The dependable one, the one who shows up, the one who holds it all together. Nobody warns you that strength, when it's performed for long enough, starts to feel like a prison. A very clean, very organized, very lonely prison. You smile through the hard parts. You say, "I'm fine." So many times it becomes a reflex. You listen to everyone else's pain with a full, open heart, and then you quietly fold your own back up and tuck it away somewhere no one can see it. Somewhere even you stop looking. And the weight of that, the weight we carry when we stop letting ourselves be fully known, it doesn't stay small, it grows. It settles into your shoulders, your jaw, the tight place behind your sternum that never quite relaxes. It shows up as fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. As a vague restlessness. As that hollow feeling you get at the end of a day where everything went right and somehow you still feel like something is missing. You're not imagining it. Something is missing. And it's not a vacation. It's not a new routine. It's not even a different relationship, though Lord knows we sometimes chase that one hard enough. What's missing is you, the unguarded, unpolished, unperforming version of you that hasn't had a real sanctuary in a very, very long time. I want to talk to you today about something that has been wildly misunderstood by culture, by the women who raised us, by every message we absorbed about what it means to be a good woman, a mature woman, a woman who has earned her place at the table. I want to talk about vulnerability, not the soft pastel, put it on a coffee mug version of vulnerability, not the kind that gets packaged and sold as self-care. I mean the real thing. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone before you say it. The kind that makes your hands tremble slightly when you admit, to a friend, to a sister, to yourself, I don't have this figured out. I'm scared. I'm hurting. I don't know who I am anymore now that my life has changed. Here's the unspoken truth that takes most of us far too long to understand. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It never was. It was always power wearing unfamiliar clothes. But we couldn't see that. We were taught the opposite. We were taught by women who had to be tough because the world didn't give them much choice. We were taught in households where emotions were an inconvenience, a sign of instability, something that needed to be managed before they embarrassed you. We were taught in marriages and careers and friendships where we learned, quietly and clearly, that being too much, too needy, too sad, too uncertain had consequences. So we learned to hide. We got very, very good at it. Here's what I need you to sit with for just a moment. And I mean really sit with it. Not let it wash over you like background noise. Every single time you swallowed something true to protect someone else's comfort, or to protect your own image, or because you genuinely believed that your pain wasn't important enough to voice. Every single time, you trained your nervous system to treat your own inner world as a threat. Read that again. You taught yourself that your real self, your feeling self, the self with doubts and disappointments and longing, was something to be managed, contained, kept away from others, but also kept away from your own honest gaze. And then we wonder why we feel so far from ourselves. Why the quiet whispers of, "Is this really my life?" get louder after 60. Why we look in the mirror and feel a strange, disorienting sense of not quite recognizing the woman looking back. She's not lost. She's been waiting. She has been sitting in the rooms inside you that you stopped visiting. The ones with the real memories, the real desires, the grief you never let yourself finish, the joy you were afraid to claim because what if it went away? She's been patient, remarkably patient. But here's the thing about reaching this season of life, and I mean this in the most tender, truthful way I can. Time starts to feel different after 50, after 60, after the losses that only come with living long enough. There's a kind of reckoning that happens whether we invite it or not. A natural turning inward, A question that starts asking itself in the quiet moments, if not now, when? If not this version of me, the one with nothing left to prove, then who? That question isn't a crisis. It's an invitation, and the door it's inviting you to open. It's the door you've been standing outside of for decades, hand on the knob, afraid. It's the door to your own vulnerable, magnificent, fully realized self. That's where we're going, together. And I promise you, what's on the other side is nothing like what you've been afraid of. Let's go back. Not to some distant, abstract past. Back to somewhere specific. Back to a kitchen that wasn't yours, or a classroom, or a Sunday afternoon that smelled like something cooking and something unspoken. Back to the first time you learned, not from a book, not from a lecture, but from watching, what a woman is supposed to do with her pain. Maybe it was your mother, standing at the sink, back turned, shoulders carrying something she'd never name. You'd ask her if she was okay, and she'd say, "I'm fine, honey. Set the table." And just like that, the lesson was delivered. Clean, efficient, no drama. Pain is private, feelings are inconvenient, we keep moving. Or maybe it was something louder. A father who had no patience for tears. A household where emotional expression wasn't just discouraged, it was dangerous. Where you learned very early that the safest version of you was the quietest one, the most composed one, the one who didn't need anything. Or maybe it was subtler than that. Maybe nobody was cruel. Maybe everyone was just busy, tired, doing their best with what they had. And somewhere in the beautiful, ordinary chaos of your childhood, your feelings simply got crowded out. There wasn't room, so you made yourself smaller to fit. However it happened, and it happens differently for every one of us, the result is usually the same. We became masters of concealment. There's a word I want to gently challenge because I think it's doing enormous damage to women in this season of life. That word is strong. Now, before you tense up, I'm not saying strength is bad. Strength has kept you alive. Strength has raised children, held marriages together, built careers, survived losses that would have leveled anyone. Strength is real and it is earned, and it deserves every ounce of respect. But there is a version of strength that we've been sold, a counterfeit version, and it has cost us more than we know. The counterfeit version says, strong women don't fall apart. Strong women don't burden others. Strong women process their pain quietly, privately, quickly, and then they get back to being useful. Strong women don't need. They provide. They don't ask. They answer. They don't lean. They are leaned upon. And the cruelest part, we didn't just accept this mythology. We wore it like a badge. We built our identities around it. Because when you're told, directly or indirectly, that your value lies in your reliability, your composure, your ability to function under pressure without complaint, of course you start to perform that. Of course you start to believe that the performance is you. But it isn't. It never was. I think about the women I've known, women I've sat with in therapy rooms, women I've known as friends, women I've been privileged to walk alongside through the hardest passages of their lives. And I think about how many of them described the same quiet crisis. Not a dramatic breakdown, not a moment of visible collapse, just a slow, creeping exhaustion, a growing sense of invisibility, a feeling that they had been so busy being needed that they had never quite gotten around to being known. One woman, I'll call her Margaret, though that isn't her name, she was 63 when she sat across from me for the first time. Retired nurse, 3 grown kids, a marriage that was, by most measures, fine. And she said something I've never forgotten. She said, "I've spent 40 years making sure everyone around me was okay. And last Tuesday, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the grocery store and I cried for 20 minutes, and I had absolutely no idea what I was crying about. And what scared me most wasn't the crying. It was realizing that I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt anything this real. 20 minutes of real feeling after 40 years of performed composure. That parking lot wasn't a breakdown. That parking lot was her true self, finally finding a sliver of space to breathe. Here's what the mythology of strength actually costs us. And I want to be specific because this isn't abstract, it costs us our relationships. Not the surface ones, those often survive just fine, but the deep ones. The ones built on genuine knowing, because you cannot truly be close to someone you're always performing for. And when we spend decades presenting only our most capable, most composed, most together selves to the people we love, they never really get to know us. And we never really get to feel loved for who we actually are, only for who we've managed to appear to be. That's a particular kind of loneliness, one of the loneliest kinds there is. Because it lives inside relationships that look fine from the outside, it also costs us our health. And I don't mean that metaphorically. The research on emotional suppression is sobering. When we habitually override our emotional experience, when we feel sadness and perform happiness, feel fear and perform confidence, feel grief and perform functionality, our bodies absorb what our minds won't acknowledge. It shows up as chronic tension, autoimmune flares, sleep disruption, that persistent low-grade anxiety that hums underneath everything and never quite goes away. Your body has been keeping score, patiently, faithfully, even when you weren't. And perhaps most painfully, the mythology of strength costs us ourselves. The quiet whispers of our own inner life, our longings, our questions, our creative impulses, our grief, our genuine joy, they don't disappear when we suppress them. They go underground. And things that go underground don't dissolve. They compact. They ferment. They wait. So here's the question I want to leave sitting in the room with you, like a candle you can't quite look away from. What would happen if the strongest thing you ever did was let someone see you struggle? Not perform struggle. Not package it neatly with a lesson and a resolution. Just struggle, visibly, without immediately reassuring everyone that you're going to be okay. What if that moment was the most powerful thing you've ever offered another human being? Because here's the unspoken truth about vulnerability that nobody tells you when you're young enough to change the pattern more easily. When you allow yourself to be truly seen, in your confusion, your grief, your fear, your imperfection, you don't become less to the people who matter. You become more. You become real. You become someone they can actually reach. Someone they can love without the exhausting distance of your armor between you. And something else happens too. Something quieter and more personal. When you stop performing strength for everyone else, you finally get to feel it. The real kind. The kind that doesn't require an audience. The kind that lives in the body as settledness rather than tension. The kind that whispers, I am here, I am whole, I am enough, exactly as I am right now, not the managed version, not the composed version, the real one. That's where we're going next. Because knowing where the wound came from is only part of the healing. The other part, the harder, more luminous part, is learning to do something different with it. And that starts with understanding what vulnerability actually is. Not the terrifying thing you've been avoiding, but the quiet, radical, world-rearranging act of telling the truth about your own inner life. Let's clear something up right now. Because I think there's a picture in your head when you hear the word vulnerability, and I think it might be getting in the way. You're imagining falling apart in public, oversharing with someone who hasn't earned it, crying at the wrong moment, saying too much, needing too much, becoming the kind of woman who makes other people uncomfortable. You're imagining losing control, losing dignity, losing the carefully constructed sense of self that has taken you decades to build. That's not vulnerability. That's what we fear vulnerability looks like because we've never been shown a clean, honest model of what it actually is. Real vulnerability isn't theatrical. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't require an audience or a confessional or a breakdown in the middle of a dinner party. Real vulnerability is quieter than that, and smaller. And somehow, because of its smallness, infinitely more powerful. It's saying, I don't know, when you genuinely don't know, instead of performing certainty to keep everyone calm. It's telling your daughter, that hurt my feelings, instead of pretending it didn't and carrying the weight of it silently for weeks. It's sitting across from a friend you've known for 30 years and saying, I'm not doing as well as I've been letting on. Can I tell you the truth? It's writing in a journal at midnight without editing yourself, without making your own pain sound prettier or more manageable than it is. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I'm grieving, I'm uncertain, I'm changing in ways I don't fully understand yet. And not immediately following that with, but I'll be fine. It is, at its most essential, the act of letting what is true take up space, inside yourself first, and then carefully, selectively with people who have earned the right to witness it, with others. That's it. That's the whole terrifying, magnificent thing. Now, I want to acknowledge something because I think you deserve that acknowledgement. It makes complete sense that this feels dangerous. It's not weakness to be afraid of vulnerability. It's history. Your history. The accumulated evidence of a lifetime that told you over and over, in large ways and small, this is not safe. Being this open is not safe. The world doesn't hold you gently when you show your soft places. And for many of us, that evidence was real. The people who should have received our vulnerability with care didn't. The moments when we tried to say something true and were met with dismissal or impatience, or the particular cruelty of being told we were too sensitive, those moments left marks. Invisible ones, but deep. So the nervous system learned it built walls. Not out of dysfunction, but out of wisdom. The survival wisdom of a younger self who needed protection and found the best way she knew to create it. Here's what I want you to hear with your whole heart. That protection served you then. You don't have to carry it the same way now. Because you are not that younger woman anymore. You have lived decades more. You have survived things she couldn't have imagined. You have, whether you fully recognize it or not, developed a discernment, a capacity to know at a soul level who is safe and who isn't, who has earned your truth and who hasn't. Vulnerability doesn't mean giving everyone access. It means giving some people access, the right people, in the right moments, and trusting yourself, that battle-tested, beautifully seasoned self, to know the difference. There's a particular kind of courage that belongs to the season of life. And I don't think we talk about it enough. The courage of a woman who has nothing left to prove. When you're in your 20s, 30s, even your 40s, there's so much striving, so much constructing. Building the career, building the family, building the version of yourself that the world will take seriously. There's so much energy going outward, toward the making of a life, that the inner life sometimes gets quietly starved. But something shifts. It doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen for everyone at the same age. But at some point, usually after a loss, or a transition, or just the slow accumulating weight of time, the outward striving starts to feel less urgent. And the inward questions start to feel more so. Who am I underneath everything I've built? What do I actually feel? Not what am I supposed to feel? Not what is appropriate to feel, but what is true. What have I never said that needs to be said? What have I never grieved that needs to be grieved? What have I never allowed myself to want that is still quietly wanting? These questions aren't signs of a late life crisis. They're signs of a late life awakening. And they require vulnerability to answer. Because answering them honestly means being willing to find out things about yourself that might be uncomfortable, might be surprising, might require you to change or grieve or let go of a story you've been telling about yourself for a very long time. That takes courage of a very specific and underrated kind. I want to tell you about something that happens reliably, almost universally, when women in this season of life begin to practice genuine vulnerability. Not perform it, not manage it into acceptability. Actually practice it. The first thing that happens is fear. Real physical fear. The kind that lives in the stomach. Because the body doesn't know yet that this is safe. The body is still running the old program. Hide, contain, manage, perform. So when you start to say the true thing, to let the real feeling show, there's a moment of sheer terror that precedes it. Breathe through that moment, it passes. And then, and this is the part that undoes people in the best possible way, something on the other side opens up. The person you were afraid to be vulnerable with, they lean in, they soften. They say something like, "Me too," or "I had no idea," or "Thank you for telling me that." Because here's the universal, humbling, beautiful truth about human connection. Your willingness to be real gives other people permission to be real too. Vulnerability is contagious, but not in the way we fear. Not in a way that makes things fall apart. In a way that makes things come together. That makes people feel less alone. That transforms a relationship from two people performing adequacy at each other into two people actually meeting. That meeting, that moment of genuine contact between two unguarded human beings, is one of the most profound experiences available to us while we're alive. Most people go their entire lives without enough of it. Not because they're incapable, but because someone has to go first. What if, at this point in your life, with all the wisdom you carry, all the losses that have already cracked you open, all the things you now know aren't worth protecting. What if you were the one to go first? There's another thing that happens when you begin to practice vulnerability, and it's more personal than the relational shift, more interior. You start to trust yourself again, not the performed self, not the capable, composed, I've got it handled self, the real self, the one who knows things, quiet things, bone deep things, that the performing self has been too busy to listen to. She's been speaking to you this whole time, that inner self, in the restlessness, in the dreams that leave you unsettled, in the way certain music breaks something open in your chest without warning, in the tears that come at unexpected moments when something beautiful or something sorrowful touches you past your defenses. She knows what she needs. She knows what she's grieving. She knows what she still wants even now, even after everything. She knows which relationships are feeding her and which ones have been slowly draining her for years. She knows what she believes underneath all the things she was told to believe. When you let yourself be vulnerable, when you stop the constant performance long enough to actually feel, you hear her more clearly. And when you hear her, and when you respond to her with care instead of suppression, something extraordinary happens. The tightness starts to ease. The hollow feeling begins to fill. Not with noise, not with distraction, not with business, but with something that feels, for maybe the first time in a long time, like presence. Like you're actually here, in your own life, inhabiting it fully, rather than managing it from a careful, protected distance. That's what vulnerability gives you. Not exposure, not weakness, not the dramatic unraveling you've been afraid of. It gives you back to yourself. And from that place, that grounded, honest, fully inhabited place, you become capable of something you may not have believed was still available to you at this point in your life. You become capable of genuine transformation, not the self-improvement kind, not the fix what's broken kind, the kind that comes from the inside out, the kind that starts with one true sentence spoken into a safe space and slowly, quietly begins to rearrange everything. We're almost there. The final piece isn't about understanding vulnerability. You understand it now. It's about what you actually do with it, starting tomorrow, starting today, starting in the next quiet moment that finds you. So here we are. You've done the hard work of just staying with this, of not clicking away, not telling yourself you'd think about it later, not folding this conversation up and tucking it somewhere safe and forgettable. You stayed. That matters more than you know, because staying with uncomfortable truth is itself a form of vulnerability. And you just did it. So let's talk about what comes next. Not in theory, not in the abstract language of self, help that sounds beautiful and does nothing. In the actual, ordinary, Tuesday afternoon texture of your real life. Because here's what I know about transformation. Real transformation, the kind that lasts, it doesn't begin with a grand gesture. It doesn't begin with a difficult conversation or a dramatic revelation or a retreat in the mountains. Though all of those things have their place. It begins with something small enough to do today. It begins with a moment of honesty so quiet that no one else might even notice it happened. And then another one. And then another. Until one day you look up and realize that the woman you're being right now, this more present, more honest, more fully inhabited version of you, has become the one who feels most like home. The first place vulnerability begins is not with another person. It begins with you. Before you can offer your truth to anyone else, you have to be willing to sit with it yourself. And that is, for many of us, the most frightening frontier of all. Because other people we can manage. We can read the room, calibrate what we share, protect ourselves if things go sideways. But ourselves, we're with ourselves all the time. There's no exit strategy. And yet, the sanctuary you've been looking for, the one that feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years, it lives inside that honest relationship with your own inner world. So start there. Find 15 minutes, not to be productive, not to plan or organize or accomplish anything, just to sit with yourself and ask one question and let whatever comes up, come up. Don't judge it. Don't edit it. Don't immediately try to solve it or reframe it into something more manageable. The question is simply this: what am I actually feeling right now? Underneath everything I've been doing, not what you should be feeling, Not what makes sense to feel given everything you have to be grateful for. What is actually, quietly, persistently true in your inner landscape right now? Write it down if that helps. Many women find that the page is the safest place to begin because it doesn't react, doesn't need reassurance, doesn't require you to manage its response. You can be completely unaided with a journal in a way that takes years to achieve with another human being. But whether you write it or simply sit with it, let it be true. Let it take up space inside you without rushing to make it smaller or prettier or more resolved than it actually is. That's step one. And it's not small. It is, for many of us, the beginning of everything. The second practice is one I call chosen witness. This is where vulnerability moves from the interior into relationship, carefully, selectively, with intention. A chosen witness is someone in your life who has demonstrated, through their actions and not just their words, that they can hold what is real without flinching. Someone who doesn't immediately try to fix you when you're hurting or minimize what you're feeling to make the moment more comfortable. Someone who can sit in the hard, uncertain middle of your experience with you without needing it to resolve quickly. These people are not as rare as we sometimes fear, but they are specific. And part of the practice is learning to identify them. To stop casting your deepest truth in front of people who don't know what to do with it, and instead to seek out the ones who do. Think of one person in your life right now, just one. Someone who, when you imagine saying something genuinely true and unguarded, feels like possibility rather than threat, warmth rather than risk. Someone whose presence makes the honest thing feel slightly more sayable than it does alone. You don't have to tell them everything. You don't have to have the whole conversation at once. You just have to take one step toward being more real with them than you were yesterday. Maybe it's as simple as, I've been having a harder time lately than I've let on. I don't need you to fix anything. I just wanted you to know. 7 words of truth after years of managed distance. And watch what happens in the space between you. The third practice is the one that frightens people most because it lives closest to the bone. I call it completing what was left unfinished. Most of us, by the time we reach this season of life, are carrying grief we never fully felt. Loss we moved through too quickly because life demanded we keep going. Anger we were never permitted to express. Tenderness we never got to show before someone was gone. Words we rehearsed but never said, to people who are no longer here to receive them, or to people who are still here but from whom we've kept a careful, protective distance. The unfinished emotional business of a life doesn't resolve itself with time. Time alone doesn't heal. It only distances. What heals is feeling. What heals is allowing yourself to go back into the room where something true lives and stay there long enough to acknowledge it. This might mean grieving a loss, a death, a divorce, an identity you released when life changed, that you handled at the time with admirable practicality and never gave yourself permission to fully mourn. It might mean writing a letter you never send, to your mother, to your younger self, to the version of you that worked so hard for so long and was never once told she was doing beautifully. It might mean sitting in a therapy room for the first time, or returning after years away and letting someone trained to bear witness help you carry what you've been carrying alone. It might simply mean allowing yourself to cry about something you've been not crying about for 15 years. Just letting it move through you, without judgment, without immediately reassuring yourself that you're being ridiculous. You are not being ridiculous. You are being human. Finally, fully, bravely human. And here's the last thing I want to leave with you. The thing I most need you to hear, in whatever quiet space you're in as these words find you. You have spent so much of your life being strong for other people. Holding things together, showing up, delivering, enduring, carrying the weight we carry without asking for help, without letting the seams show, without letting anyone see how much it costs you. And I want to say something to that woman. To you, exactly as you are right now, thank you. What you've done has mattered. The people who have been held by your strength, even if they've never said so, even if they don't fully know it, have been shaped by your steadiness in ways that will outlast both of you. And I need you to hold both of these things at once, because they are both true. You don't have to keep doing it the same way. The woman you are now, with all the living you've done, all the losses that have quietly carved more room inside you, all the accumulated knowing that comes from having navigated this much of a human life. She doesn't need the armor the same way anymore. She's earned the right to be known, not just appreciated, not just relied upon, known. In her uncertainty and her longing and her grief and her still burning, still reaching, still utterly alive desire for a life that feels real and full and genuinely hers. That life doesn't start when everything is resolved. It doesn't start when the kids are settled or the health scare passes or you finally figure out who you are in this new chapter. It starts the moment you decide that your inner life is worth telling the truth about. It starts with one honest sentence. It starts with letting someone, yourself first, then someone safe, see the real you. Not the performing you. Not the strong for everyone else you. The tender, complicated, weathered, wonderful, still becoming you. Because here's the final unspoken truth that I've watched transform lives. Not overnight, not without discomfort, but genuinely and permanently transform them. The most powerful thing you will ever do is let yourself be fully seen. Not despite your vulnerability, because of it. That's where the real strength lies. Not in the armor, not in the performance, not in the decades of keeping it all beautifully, exhaustingly together. It lives in the moment you finally set it down and breathe and say, quietly, to yourself, to someone who loves you, to the world that has needed the real you far more than it ever needed the managed version. Here I am. All of me. And I'm not hiding anymore. That's enough. That is more than enough. That is everything.